Well, everybody, I acquired something that's going to help me with this model engine project. I was struggling with my flywheels, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and just obtain the 3-inch material that I need. I didn't want to use aluminum. I wanted to make this thing out of steel, heavier materials. Let's check out what we have in here. 3-inch piece of 12L14. It's pretty hefty, but this is going to let me make my flywheels for this project and other projects out of some good hefty steel. Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Deez. This is my workshop, and today we're going to start part 2 of the Wobbler engine build. I had to finish what I was working on in part 1. If you remember, we left off. I need to finish the valve plate and drill the holes and get that going, but I wanted to stop and pause there and think about the project, go through the documentation and find out what it is that I need, and just wrap my head around understanding how this thing's going to be put together. There's a few things I discovered that I'm going to have to make myself, and I think I'm going to start this video out making the brass air inlet. This thing calls for, I think they're for model engines, model hobby airplanes, things like that. But it's a little barbed air inlet like this. But it's a 1032 thread. It's really small. There's only, like, if you search for it on the internet, there's very few of them out there, and the ones you find are very expensive. So I decided I've got this hex brass. I'm gonna make my own air inlet. It doesn't need to be barbed. It just needs to be a size where I could put a little hose clamp on it if I wanted to permanently set it up, or just slip on a hose for the air inlet. So I'm going to make my own brass fitting. That's how we're going to start this video, and we're just going to go through this as far as we can get to where I've got plenty of content for you to feel like it's a proper part 2. Some more things that I did pick up besides those, I picked up an assortment of some 2-inch 1032 screws. I didn't have any 2-inch, and this thing calls for where you mount the cylinder, and it'll wobble on the other side. So I needed some of those. In addition, you know, I've got some springs laying around, but I thought I'm gonna go ahead and pick up an assortment of springs. Went with the feel of what I was kind of thinking they needed to be like, and so I've got an assortment. One of them, some of them might be way too hard, but I have plenty of options here to work with. Other than that, I did pick up a 3-inch round piece of 12L14. That's a pretty stout stock of steel, but I didn't want to make the flywheel out of aluminum. I wanted it to be steel. I wanted it to be heavier. So I decided I'm going to buy some raw stock that I can make flywheels out of, or other projects, and I've got a substantial piece of 12L14. It'll machine well, and I'm going to make the flywheel out of that. And the reason I bought that was because I needed to make my own, because it's a 1-inch wide flywheel plus a 1/4-inch boss on one side of it in order to mount everything up. So I decided I'm going to make my own. So with all that said, I think the first thing that we want to do, let's make this fitting and get that out of the way. we've got our air inlet created and made. This is going to work out well. I've got the end of this made. I think this is going to work out for what I'm going to do with the engine. This will receive the tip of my air hose nozzle, and I've got my 1032 thread. Here's my thread checker. Works great. And I think that's going to work out really well for my air inlet. Rather than buying one for a ridiculous amount of money, I just made my own. Well, everybody, I had to take a week break. We were out of town, so it's time to pick this engine build back up. If you remember from the last clip, we made our little inlet, air inlet for this. Hopefully this isn't too thin where it meets where I threaded this down. I think it's going to be just fine. I'm not going to crank it down too hard, but this was the last thing we worked on because I just couldn't find one that was reasonable in price. And I thought, I got brass stock, might as well make my own. Now that we have that done out of the way, I think the next two things I'd like to finish for this video are the valve plate and the flywheel. I've sourced some 3-inch 12L14. I like 12L14 because it turns really well, leaves a nice finish. It's easy to machine. It's going to be plenty heavy for my flywheel. And right now I'm just trying to think of the right order of operations in order to achieve a very concentric piece. I want that thing to be as concentric as possible to the center that's drilled out. Before we continue on this video, I wanted to give a shout out to Rusty Knox as well. He just posted a video and he gave me a shout out. I got many subscribers from that. Thank you very much for that. It really helps out my humble little channel. I appreciate everybody that's come over here and started watching some of my content because of that. You'll notice earlier in my videos, some of the early stuff's pretty rough, but remember, I was new to YouTube and new to machining as a whole. I was very, very new to it. Just trying to figure it out as I go. And that's really the whole premise of this channel. You'll see a progression in both video quality and knowledge of machining from the beginning to the end. If you were, not that you want to watch all the videos, but if you watched them all in chronological order, hopefully you would see a progression of skills. Rusty Knox was kind enough to put my sticker on his cheap door. And what do you guys think if I was to create a sticker wall or a sticker panel? I think I might do that and start putting some of the fellow YouTube channel stickers out there. I've got some from Rusty Knox. Thank you for sharing these, by the way. And I'd like to put these somewhere to display for the occasional shot in the background so people can kind of see the community. It really is a community of YouTubers who are making videos, just hobby machinists, and some are professionals, but it's really a great community. I've learned a lot from everybody out there. I'd be happy to share and put their sticker on a sticker wall. Just curious what your thoughts are. And if you have a YouTube channel and you want to send me a sticker, hit me up in my email and maybe we can figure something out there. I would gladly share your sticker as well. I know I mentioned this before, but these plans are not they're missing some critical measurements depending on where how you're making this. So I'm really trying to take this slow, but there is no distance from one side or the other for where my flywheel connecting shaft should be to the crank disc. I know it's 1 inch down, but it does not say how far over it should be. I'm trying to look at some other measurements to figure that out. Same with these two. There is no measurement on how far down each of these two holes, both the air intake and the air exhaust. But that one I could figure out. They're 200 thou apart. So if I have my center line between those two, which I'm assuming is correct, because that will be my pivot, then I just need to come down 1 inch and go up 100 thou and down 100 thou. So I can figure that one out. This one's 100 thou over. But this one, they're missing a measurement. Maybe I can figure it out from the cylinder Well, it wouldn't be part of the cylinder. Yeah, it's missing some critical components. So I'm going to have to, I think I'm going to have to go back and forth on some of these parts and create what I can, come back and re-drill later based off the missing information. This is missing information that I need. Because all this stuff matters when you're trying to get this thing to move smoothly. And I want to make sure I get it right. I don't want to scrap any of these pieces. I could move on to my flywheel. That might be what I do. Let's do that. I can make this piece. At least I'll have it ready to go. And we'll do this. And I'll think about the valve plate on how I want to do that. But let's get our flywheel created. That's going to be the next thing we do. Due to the size of my lathe and the fact that this is a 3-inch chunk of steel and I wouldn't be able to get a proper center on this, I can't put this through the headstock. I'm going to go ahead and cut off a little more than I need. I'm just going to have to try to my best to indicate this thing once I get my boss made, and then I'll clamp it back in with the boss. What we're going to do is just cut this on the bandsaw. Try to cut it as evenly as possible. I need 1.25 inches for sure to include the boss. Mark that, and I want to give myself a little more to face off both ends. I think that'll give me enough wiggle room. So we want to mark that and somehow mark this evenly around. There's probably a trick to this. That'll get me as close as I can make it. See how well I did. I'm sure it's not great. 1352. 1365. That's 10 thou difference. You know what? Overall, plenty of meat. That's what I wanted. I wasn't too far off, a little bit, but I'll take it. Well, I used my test indicator to get this as, this is all, from the factory milled, probably hot rolled. So it's not going to be perfect, but it's pretty good. I have this dialed into within 5 thou. I think that's just going to have to be how it is. Well, I have this indicated into within 5 thou. that's going to be as good as I'm going to get it for the material that I have. I could probably get it a little better, but I keep going back and forth, and if any of you've tried to do that, it gets pretty frustrating. It's pretty good now. I'm going to go with that. We're going to face this off. We're going to get our 1/4 inch boss turned down in the lathe, and then we also need to drill a 1/4 inch hole. $256. Now we need to flip it over. My only concern is if the hole didn't drill straight through, but if it, I kind of thought maybe I should have taken this out and drilled the hole with the mill. I think that would be more true, but I think this is going to work out. It is 256 thou in diameter measured with a pin, and I'll make sure when I turn my crankshaft down that I'll do 256 thou as well. Let's flip this over. And we need to face off this end, and before I do that I'm going to try my best to dial this in again. I just put it in the chuck and I've got it within 1 or 2 thou with not really doing a whole lot of indicating, and I thought I would share it with you. So we're 2 or 3 thou out. I'm going to leave it at that. Let's get down here and finish the flywheel, and then I'll bring you up to speed. I haven't created a whole lot of materials, but I did make the flywheel. The flywheel I used the 12L14. It's much more substantial than it was going to be with aluminum. Turned out really nice. The bore is 1/4 inch. This is a 256 thou pin, minus gate, minus pin, and that slides in there pretty nicely. So that's 256 thou that goes in. So now I know I finally put my pin gauges to use, so I know I have something to shoot for the crankshaft, 256 thou. I'll probably make the crank disc before, because I want to match this 256 thou on that, so that the entire crankshaft will be 256 thou minus, so probably a little under, and that will be my precision fit that I'm going for that. But this turned out really nice. This is going to be much heavier than the aluminum was going to be. My target was 1 inch. I have 1 inch and 45 thou. I'm going to call that pretty close, good enough. I've got everything pretty concentric. I did my best on this. I think it turned out really well. I'm really happy with this. A lot of what I've been doing today, I've been collaborating with Aaron Kohler, the Model Engine Club up there in Northeast Indiana. And really, this if you're going to tackle this wobbler guide that I showed here, if you're going to use these plans, there's some missing components. I'll try to summarize at the end the numbers and things that I found that were kind of a discrepancy that I changed along the way to try to improve my outcome. One of them in particular is the valve plate. If you study the drawing, we're missing the distance from either end for the flywheel pivot, the flywheel hole. So you don't really know your distances. I mean, you can kind of decipher some of it, but it's just not real clear on here. In the end, I used that big chunk of steel that I had, that big 3-inch piece of 12L14. I made the flywheel. This thing's heavy. This thing's going to work, I really hope anyway. And this was today's task. Now, we continued on. If you remember, I made the inlet, the air intake. That's going to go into the valve plate. Again, I wanted to get the valve plate done today, but I don't think I'm going to get to that. This took a long time to just get right. And I'm still trying to decipher the plans here. There's just some weird things that you want to make sure you got in order before you start drilling, reaming, and all of that. We do have one final operation. We need to drill and tap for a 632 hole on the boss for being able to fasten this to the crankshaft. What I'm going to do is use this little scrap piece of nylon V-block that I made and messed up. I'm going to set that in here, and that should keep this thing pretty square. I do wish it was shorter down. Don't really think I can. Actually, I got a better idea. You know, I'm just going to do that. We'll fasten this down nice and tight so it can't move either way, and then we'll find the center using our wobble gauge, and then I can drill and tap for that hole. But this will give me a lot more meat to bite onto rather than try to use that thing. I'm going to chamfer with the drill bit. I can't get a chamfering bit in there. Try a little bit bigger. Got him. Better. Well, my workbench is really starting to become a giant mess, but that's just part of the process. I'll clean it up later. But we've got our flywheel complete. I think I'm gonna have to close part 2 on this video. We made our air inlet, we made our flywheel. Let me give you a better look of that. Turned out really, really nice. This is 1 inch thick, 12L14. It's gonna be plenty hefty for the flywheel. I went ahead, and I know this is taboo, but I used an M4 5.7 set screw here because I don't have 6/32, and I really don't want to buy more set screws. I got so many different things. So yes, I'm mixing some metric and imperial. I didn't want to, but this is what I have, and that's what I'm going to use. So I've got a 256 pin, minus pin, gauge pin. I've got this sliding in there very nicely. Goes all the way through. Very tight fit. And we've got our set screw. M4 set screw. You can snug that down. It's not going anywhere. I'm not going to crank that down on the pin. Nice. So according to the drawing, again, we have to modify a lot of things in this drawing. But according to the drawing, we've got our flywheel done. I have my air inlet intake done. We have our base. The next thing I'm going to be working on, and that's going to be the next video because I'm trying to sort some things out, is the valve plate. So we'll get to that. I'll describe what the problems are in that video. And for now, I'm going to close this video out here with the flywheel completed and this air inlet. There's really a lot of... This isn't a perfect set of plans. And I think it was really sold as a kit. But there's measurements missing. So I have to decipher and try to understand what they were trying to go for. But for today, we have got a good flywheel. This thing turned out just nice. And I think that's going to work out great. Well, everybody, camera difficulties and all kinds of issues today. I want to get part 2 created. All this stuff just takes a lot of time. You guys know that. But we did get our parts made for part 2 of this video. I wanted to get a little further along, but I still need to stop and think a little bit before I start drilling into that. I think I know what I'm going to do now, but I want to sleep on it. I want that to be part 3, the valve plate, and trying to make sure we get everything drilled where it's supposed to be. I don't want to make any mistakes and have any bozo holes and things like that. So that's going to be the next part. We finished the flywheel. We created a new custom air intake. Well, I'll try to piece together a good video here. Sorry for the wordiness, but again, these plans are not complete, and I'm really trying to understand it and figure it out as I go. If you haven't subscribed, please do. It really helps out the channel. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I appreciate everybody watching. Thank you to all you new subscribers who are watching this build. Again, apologies for this video. This one's really kind of going to be mashed together, and we'll get better content next week and continue this Wobbler engine build. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I hope to see you on the next one.